is the Vintage RPG Podcast, your source for the best in classic and contemporary RPGs. With your hosts, Hambone and Stu.
Welcome to this RPG Podcast, coming at you again from the clubhouse, hidden somewhere in the swamps of New Jersey. I'm John Hambone McGuire, and with me, as always, is the founder and publisher of Unwinnable. He always knew that the Hobgoblin wasn't Ned Leeds, Stu Horvath.
Oh man, the heights of the Marvel Hobgoblin. Jeez.
Oh yeah.
Such a wonderful moment in comics time that never really, true to comic storylines almost across the board, it never really resolved satisfactorily. But in the moment, like as it was happening, like nobody cares how it ended. It was all about the buildup. Gosh, that was such a good story.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, legitimately, nothing ever really paid off per se. No. You know, it was the rarest circumstances that they stuck the landing in an ending. But the covers that happened at that time, you know, the overall
covers are so good.
Oh, I know, the storyline, everything was like crazy in Spider-Man for a time, because it was like, you know, everyone had like the Green Goblin, who was kind of, you know, still considered to be a little bit of a, I mean, yes, he killed Gwen Stacy. Yeah. But like, you know, he was kind of old hat at that point. But the Hobgoblin, the color patterns, new and refreshing. Holy shit. And, you know, eventually, I think they realized they painted themselves into a corner. Because I've been rereading a lot of stuff in the Marvel Unlimited app. You know, I was like, you know, watching TikToks at night for a while. But then once TikTok went south, I was like, man, I don't need to be on another site. So I picked up the Marvel Unlimited app again. I've been reading comics every night. I'm going through all like the great Spider-Man storylines. And I'm kind of seeing in the storyline where the Hobgoblin kind of came out, and like they realized they kind of painted themselves into a corner, or like, you know, in the bullpen, maybe the left hand didn't know what the right hand was doing at a certain point. And they're like, it's Roderick Kingsley. Ha! We knew it all along. Surprise! Like, you know,
wait, is that what they actually went with?
Yeah, Roderick Kingsley. They were like, okay, you know, Ned Leeds, false flag on the Hobgoblin, and then ultimately, oh god, this is carrying out Spider-Man right now. This is a sidebar, everyone, real quick, but it's kind of, you know, it's important to us. Everyone thought it was like kind of Roderick Kingsley, but they kind of stuck with like the Ned Leeds thing. But then they retconned it that no, Ned Leeds was he was brainwashed.
Yeah.
Then they're finally like in like the late 90s, they're like, oh no, it was Roderick Kingsley. Like, yeah, no, it was a brainwashing thing. Ned was brainwashed, and now like there's like this machine that's come up in like recent years in Spider-Man, like, you know, where Spidey gets brainwashed, and like, you know, Ben Reilly and all, you know, everything's old is new again. But yeah, Hobgoblin officially Roderick Kingsley.
Okay. Jason Macendale was the second Hobgoblin.
Yes.
Okay. One of the things that I really like about we'll get to the game part of this.
Yeah. Listen, I popped Stu at a joke today. He actually laughed legitimately. So we are going on a path.
And this is the Hobgoblin content that I need.
Yeah.
The thing that I thought that made that storyline work so well was this idea that like that concept of Green Goblin having all these caches of weapons and tech all over the city, and then all of these guys accidentally finding them and being like, okay, well, I'm going to be a Halloween supervillain. Like Jack-o'-lantern, Hobgoblin, just that continuity of all these guys just kind of digging up this stuff and getting like trapped in Norman's web is like, I just love that. I always thought that Jack-o'-lantern was like way underrated.
Oh, so underrated.
And just the costume design, and same with Hobgoblin, like blue and orange. I think they overdid it a little bit with Hobgoblin too, with after the Inferno with the tongue and everything.
Yeah.
Tongues after a while in Spider-Man. It's weird.
You know what it was? It's all Venom.
Yeah.
Venom's got a tongue. He's got to have a tongue too. Everyone gets a tongue.
Yeah,
you get a tongue, and you get a tongue.
Keep your tongues in your mouth, man. I didn't consent to this, but so. Yeah, just a great moment in time, and even like, oh god, like was it Webb that had like the Puma as the CEO for a while, and like there were just like it was just like a really well done, having the three different comics, like really allowed that universe to like really breathe in a way that like you don't see so much anymore.
Yeah, now when it's like, you know, three different comics, like I'm currently reading like 4 different X-Men titles, and there's 4 different teams throughout the titles, and they're all different stories. There's a larger thing going on in the background in the world of mutants now, all the modern stuff anyway. But like when they do it with Spider-Man, it's kind of different, and I still think to a degree it's different in a way because it offers a greater palette for the whole world because he is the main character.
Yeah.
It's not like, well, Jubilee's the main character in this book. Rogue's the leader of this team. Cyclops is off in like Alaska or whatever he is now. And like, but this is Spider-Man's world. Like what you're seeing is you're just seeing kind of different boroughs of New York and things that are happening all over the place. So
it was cool because like you had like a different ensemble of supporting characters in each one. They all reacted differently to the events that were going on. And it was just the way it interacted. That was really cool.
Yeah. Make mine Marvel. True believer.
So, I cannot tell a lie. Part of the appeal of Hobgoblin the Wargame is just the mystique of the word Hobgoblin that is derived for me primarily through the appeal of the supervillain.
That's right.
It is not as unconnected as one might think. The funny thing is, just as an aside, I'm working on the monster book, and I'm supposed to be working on the fairies section. And hobgoblins in the folklore are actually the hob is a prefix to goblin. Goblins are nasty little guys. You want to avoid goblins, but you put hob on the front of it, and they become nice. They're sort of like the hobgoblins traditionally are rather helpful, like brownies in a way, but. Should I spoil the book? Yeah, why not? It's going to be a couple of years before it comes out. The Puritans, of all people, screwed it up. I can't remember which particular, maybe Bunyan? Pilgrims? I don't remember where it is, but there's a poem where he's just like, hobgoblins are evil. And since that point, everybody's sort of been like, oh yeah, hobgoblins, they must be worse goblins because it's longer or something.
Yeah.
But after that point, it's just like, because it's not just the supervillain. There's the Hobbs in Quatermass of the Pit, and like there's just like a whole bunch of this buildup of the idea that Hobbs are evil, or at least very very mischievous, maliciously mischievous. But it wasn't always the case. Hobgoblins used to be Team Human. So Hobgoblin, I think that there is. I mean, I have a pretty good job. I write about role-playing games and monsters and stuff, and I have a website, and like it's pretty cool. And I think that outside of my head, people see me and think, oh man, like he's doing all right. He made his hobbies into his job. That's like living the dream. And I'll tell you, it is. I love my work, but it is definitely my work.
Yeah,
it's not fun in the traditional parlance. Ever since I started painting miniatures, it's that grass is greener thing. Like when I had real jobs, all I wanted to do was write role-playing games and like work on my campaign, right? And now that that's my day job, all I want to do is paint miniatures. Like,
yeah. I mean, it's funny. I've been a musician my whole life. I'm a writer now. Still looking for a job though. Looking for a nice work from home job. Been unemployed for a little bit. But I'll tell you, what's great about having like a burnout job is that when you are still doing your writing, you're doing the thing that is for your hobby / essentially side hustle, part-time job, full-time job because you're doing it all the friggin' time, but unpaid. The joy is in the work. The joy is in learning new things and coming up with something and writing something that makes you like stoked. I mean, even being a musician, like I was a serious musician for a long time, and the joy was in being able to do the thing, not the adulation or the thing that comes with being a performer, which for me, let's be real, people, it didn't really come. I stood next to the guy, but I wasn't the guy.
Yeah.
But the joy really is in the work, but it's still a lot of work. Like, to be a creative person, you don't just kind of, unless you're, one of those dorks using AI for everything, you don't just kind of wave your fucking fingers and, put a prompt in and then suddenly, boom, I got this like awesome thing. You really got to chop away at it, man.
Yeah.
It takes time.
And really, like, there's something really deeply satisfying about painting miniatures in that I'm constantly My most recent miniature that I've painted is always my best one.
Oh yeah.
Always. There's just such a jump in like ability or something every time. And I've been doing it for a couple of years and it keeps going. Like they just keep getting better and better. And it's not like I'm like a talented painter. It's just like it's a craft thing. I'm doing the same stuff over and over and you get better at it over time. But usually craft stuff, that brain pop is spread out over a longer amount of time. You have to work harder for an extended period, and then you all of a sudden you're like, holy crap, I'm doing this so much better than I used to. And a lot of times it happens so gradually. I find this with my writing that you don't really feel it at all unless you go back and read something from like 10 years ago, and you're like, oh man, I did kind of suck back then.
Yeah.
But miniatures, it's so immediate. It's so immediately gratifying every time. Like I have the last guy I did, he's like sitting on the place of honor right on my desk, so I get to stare at him and just go like, oh man, he like, look at the flesh tone. I got the flesh tone so good on this one. He's like luminous. He's got like that kind of like glow that skin can get when it's in the sun. I was just like, this is great. Like, how did I do that? I don't really know. It just kind of happened. It's all like reflex or whatever. But so he sits there and he taunts me as I work.
Of course he does.
Because I can't, I've got a lot of work to do and I can't just drop everything and paint miniatures. But the thing with the painting of the miniatures is I've been working on like, I'll paint anything that's cool and old, but I've been primarily painting Nick Lund's orcs from Grenadier, made between like 87. I don't think they go earlier than that. And then maybe I think the end of Grenadier was around 93, 94. And he's just got these great orcs. They're so, first of all, they all look grumpy, which is great. They don't look angry. They don't look like barbarians or anything. They just look like they don't want to be part of an army, and it really appeals to me. I feel like these guys all have other jobs that they'd rather be doing, and like something's going on that they got to march off to war. It's like a real plowshares to swords kind of situation, real working class vibes.
Yeah.
But they're proportioned really interestingly. All of them have interesting details, and they're really like, they're just fun. The variety of them, they have a lot of personality, and I really enjoy them. And I have like 60 of them total and probably 20 of them painted. And I'm getting to the point where I'm just like, what am I going to do with these things? Like, these things were made for a line called Fantasy Warriors, which was a war game that the group had. Ed Coleman bought it from the comic book shop. It was I think 40 plastic miniatures, two sides, orcs versus dwarves. And like back in the day, like he bought this thing and I remember walking home with him. He was right around the corner from me at the time, and we were in his kitchen, and he opened it up, and there's all these cool miniatures, and we're immediately just like, "This is amazing!" And they're close enough to the Hero Quest miniatures that like, like there was like he had a Hero Quest box. He was the only person I really knew who had Hero Quest, so it was just like it was feeding into that. But then we got the rule book out, and it's just like, it's this crazy rule book that's on like newsprint and like no cover, and it's just like numbers everywhere. And so like we're trying to figure out how to play this game, and we couldn't. So we just made up our own, sort of extrapolating a little bit from Dungeons and Dragons and maybe a little bit from the rules, but like they needed rulers and protractors and shit. It just wasn't like, and like we had this whole thing. He had his bedroom at the time was like the whole top floor of the attic. So like we had a lot of space to do the H.G. Wells old school. We're playing on the floor with our soldiers. Very serious stuff, Hambone. But it was great. We have a great memory of like this 1 week or two where we spread out this whole war in Ed's bedroom. It was fantastic. And slowly but surely, the more I paint, the more I'm kind of like secretly chasing that dragon. Like, I don't want to get into Warhammer. I don't want to play war games. I don't want to be those like that. Like, I feel it's the same thing with Magic the Gathering. Like, no real shade. Like if you like Magic the Gathering, that's cool, but it's not for me. And like, to make sure that it's not for me, I villainize people who play Magic the Gathering. It's like an inoculation for myself so that I won't get drawn into these things. And I thought that I was really fully inoculated against war games, but then I found Hobgoblin.
Then you found Hobgoblin. I mean, but that's it. The way you do it is you like, you know, it's like the he doth protest too much. You mock the other hobby.
Right. Yeah.
See, and I remember you did. I feel like you did it with minis for a long time because you knew. It's like the reason why I've never done cocaine because I'd love it. So like, I fully endorse your like projected hatred for Magic the Gathering as a safety measure for yourself.
Yeah, Warhammer people are the enemy specifically because I don't want to join the enemy. That's the way of the world. So Hobgoblin, Mike Hutchinson of Gaslands fame puts this thing together, and it's basically the perfect war game for me because it's fast and it is designed to get miniatures on the table, and to like have them kill each other as quickly and gruesomely as possible. Like games, like he says that games can be as short as 45 minutes. Like what? I get to take my toys out, play with them, and be done in less than an hour. Hell yeah.
Yeah, I mean, a game that only lasts 45 minutes is like the new, oh, it's only an 88-minute movie?
Right.
I'll watch it.
Yeah, like I don't care how bad the movie is. If it's 88 minutes, I'll watch it.
Yeah, enough with these like 2+ hour movies, folks, especially if it's horror. If you can't get it done in 88 to 93, you're doing it wrong.
And I mean, like Nosferatu was great. I like the languid pacing of that.
Yeah.
But it was still only like a hair over 2 hours, and like well within my tolerance. Like,
Listen, there are exceptions, but you know, by and large, the 1988 Blob, perfect.
Fantastic, perfect. Yeah. I want to talk about Indiana Jones now, but we're not going to. We're going to skip that part. I've digressed enough. We got to talk about Mike Hutchinson's Hobgoblin. It was kickstarted last year, I think. I missed the Kickstarter because it was the enemy. I mean, nobody in their right mind wants to play Hobgoblin. That's foolishness. I told myself at the time.
Things you wanna believe.
Yeah, and like we went to PAX and me and Daisy were walking around. We saw all the miniature wargaming tables on the last day, and that was it. I was just like, oh God, like I do want to do this. And I got home and I ordered Hobgoblin. It had just finished fulfillment, so I got a copy. Also helpful is that it has a great cover where there is a Hobgoblin on a throne with a whole bunch of dead bodies.
Oh, it's fantastic art.
The game is super, super simple. Now, it could be simpler. It is still a war game. You're still going to need a lot of miniatures. I still have a lot of painting to do. I got to get Ed to paint his dwarves that I bought, and I have to teach him how to paint. So there's like a whole bunch of stuff that's going to happen before we ever actually play this game. But I'm still excited, and it's been a couple months, and it's still sustained. So I think that this is actually going to happen. The idea is to get miniatures directly on the table. There's no like put some terrain down, whatever. You have to build lists ahead of time, so you can define your units. This is probably one of the things that makes it sort of crunchier than like Forbidden Psalm, which is a skirmish game where you only have to worry about like 5 guys and their stats. This is like you're building units and you have to do it ahead of time so that you have the printouts so that you can kind of like consult them during play. But they're not crazy. There's like 10 or 12 different types of units that you make your miniatures fit the template. Like you don't have to worry about like the orthodoxy of like a Warhammer, where it's just like these Bretonians are light cavalry, or like these orcs are heavy infantry. Like it doesn't matter. You could just put anything in the tray, designate it heavy infantry, and it is, and that's fine. And you just push them up 1 inch per movement point until they hit another unit, and then they kill each other, and it's great. And the thing that makes units interesting and not just a bunch of stats is this system of keywords that you can apply. Basically, when you're building your army list, you have a pool of points that you agree on ahead of time, like 500-point army, 1,000-point army, whatever.
Right.
And you're spending that on your basic units, and then you're spending that on benefits and weaknesses. And weaknesses that you buy, give you extra points to spend on benefits. Very much like GURPS. It's a point buy thing. I really like the keywords because I can get my brain around it. It's not abstract, or maybe it's just abstract enough. So like you have like broken, which is when they're getting removed from the table, actually.
Okay, that's cool.
So like if the turn ends and they're still broken during the doom phase, you remove the tray and they have been vanquished or they retreat or whatever. It doesn't matter. But there's like giant, which like gives you height so you can see over units that are in front of you. So you could theoretically throw a rock at them.
Right.
Merciless, narrow footprint gives you puts the miniatures in a smaller template so that they're more effective as a fighting unit. Horde gives them a huge thing, and you can just slam a whole bunch of miniatures down. Weak, wild, swift, stubborn, like you know what I mean. They're keywords, and you immediately kind of have an idea of what they're applying, and then you look at the rules, and it sort of just builds on your basic idea and allows you to kind of have variety in your units irrespective of the actual miniature, which is why you have to have your army lists done ahead of time, and then you just throw them against each other. It's you roll d6s. There's a chart for target numbers, and it's basically just a cross reference. So like your light infantry going up against heavy cavalry, you have to roll a 6 or a 5 or better, because
Right.
like there's an imbalance there in terms of power, and those dudes are on horses and have heavy armor. So it's going to be really hard for your guys to do that. Conversely, they only have to get a 3 against ranged infantry. Light infantry is going to cut up guys with bows and leather armor. It's just and like so, and that's your categories. You only have a few types of units: light infantry, ranged infantry, heavy infantry, monstrous infantry, your random undead unit or something like that. Light cavalry, heavy cavalry, chariots, war wagons, monster, which would be my goblin war giant, or if you put a dragon down or whatever. Beasts, which is, I'm not sure what beasts is. Maybe they're like horses. I don't know. No. And then artillery, but like they're all really well defined. Like I obviously I haven't played this, so I'm not super familiar with all the categories. But but that's it. There's only that handful of unit types that you have to grok, and then on top of it, they get variety through the keywords, and sometimes and like I feel like as much as the keywords are easy to grasp, that's sort of where the surprise lays.
Right.
Like, you should have access to your opponent's lists ahead of time, just so you're not entirely surprised. But I feel like that way you kind of get a feel for their army, but the way that the keywords are going to crash up against each other is going to be the interesting part of the way the game plays out. And you can tell, like, it's just like yeah, there's more rules. Like there's rules for maneuvering, and there's spells, and there's doom. Doom is how you for every point of damage you get a doom token. Once your doom token is bigger than the unit's courage, that's when they're broken. Like it's really simple. It's really fast. As soon as units touch, they're engaged and in combat. Like there's more rules, and you could kind of just figure them out on the fly, and you can have just little wars in an hour with whatever miniatures you have. I think that like part of the appeal, it's ironic because like the whole thing, the ethos is just like he's constantly just like, just take whatever miniatures you have and make them units. But for me, I don't have the miniatures yet. Like I actually still have to paint, because like you have to have painted miniatures. It's not as much fun if they're gray.
No. There's so much more of you care about them a lot more if you see some ink on them.
Yeah, well, they come alive, right? They're little guys then. If they're not painted, they're just like chunks of metal.
That's awesome. I mean, it sounds cool, man. Like it definitely, I like the directness of the language that they use.
Yeah.
And do so in a way where even if it's something maybe you don't get, you can kind of infer what it is and then kind of check back on the fly and be reassured that you do know what it is. I've always thought war games are a higher barrier of entry than, like, say, a standard RPG.
Yeah.
And not just because of the painting of the minis, because they're I guess from my own experience, which is not a lot, but Warhammer definitely seems like there's a lot more nuance to it than there would be with just, it's D&D. Everyone, like, at this point, if you jump in there with your friends, kind of everyone knows how to play D&D per se. You rolled a hit. What do you want to do? Bob's your uncle. But something like this, like, that's something that always, other than the painting of the minis, because my hands, like, are just too uncoordinated, like coordinated enough to play a bass, but not coordinated enough to like to sit there and just with a small brush paint a mini. And that's why I play bass, bigger strings for my chubby fingers. The thing with like war games, it's for me it's always been a perception of like, okay, there's a lot more involved than me just being like, my character like farts to distract a guard, like, you know what I mean? Like you're doing a little more thinking than I guess you would be kind of just, all right, I'm going to run through this dungeon and hope for the best. But I love the idea of it. I love it in concept. And this is like the first time I've heard of a book that really breaks it down in a really easily digestible way. So that's pretty neat. And the art is sick. Yeah.
It's so refreshing to not have, like, I know a lot of Warhammer. I like Warhammer for what it is. I prefer fantasy, but there's so much lore, and like I like reading about like Warhammer in the abstract. I don't want to play Warhammer as a war game, but I enjoy a little bit of the lore and all that stuff. But all that lore is one of the reasons why it creates a really complex game, because all of these units are really complex in reflection of that lore. And then you have, whatever armies clashing, they're very distinct armies and they play very differently. And I just, it becomes too much. I really like the fact that like this is just a stripped down, fast and furious kind of approach to play. I just can't think of anything else that like that.
That's awesome.
It feels super unique and of the moment and perfectly what I need. And I am super excited to pay it a whole lot for the next couple years, and then eventually, 2027 or something, play.
You got your post good until 2026. You're planning on playing this game in 2027. This post will be up in 2028.
Yeah, there you go. It all works out. It's my kid will be in college when we finally get started.
That's good. Look, it's something to look forward to in retirement,
right?
Which you never do because you're a writer. So it's you just write shorter books. Yeah. You have any final thoughts on Hobgoblin, Stu?
I think that if you have a similar profile, miniature related profile as me, where you like miniatures, you like painting, you don't particularly like spending your days measuring movement. I mean, you have to in this. You have to. It's 1 inch per movement point, so you still need to use a ruler. But if you can get over that, and you've always kind of wanted to like throw your miniatures against somebody else's miniatures and see who wins, I think that Hobgoblin might be the game for you.
And I mean, let's be real here. If you're a nerd and you are running D&D, you're running BX, you're running Neon Lords, you're running like any kind of system. One thing that is the commonality between every RPG system is like school supplies and office supplies. Nerds love school supplies and office supplies. Mechanical pencils, pens, markers, highlighters, erasable markers, battle mats. I've never met a nerd who didn't walk into like a Staples or an Office Max or like whatever being like, all right, I know I'm here for like copy paper, but let me take a look down in the highlighter section. Like, they're people are going to be fine with rulers, man.
Yeah. No, and honestly, you don't even need miniatures to play. Like we talked about recently with Squirmish. Like, I could play this right now by stealing my kids' army guys and getting out my muscles and like having those work as the armies. Put some soda can terrain and good to go. I just don't want to play like that. I want to be a real pain in the ass about having a painted miniature.
Oh man, but like muscles, that is such a great idea. And actually though, thinking that if you're going to go that way, because muscles are all like the same color, right? Like how would you know?
They're all pink.
You could do muscles versus monster in my pockets.
Oh boy.
Then one guy's got a muscle army, who's clearly on that team, who's on the monster in my pocket team. Oh man. Anyway, we got to go home on this episode. Stu, where can people... This has been another great episode of the Vintage RPG Podcast. Stu, where can people find you on the internet?
They can find me on vintagerpg.com. I'm going to actually... One of the things that I want to do once this book is written, So like over the summer at some point, I want to go back through all my miniatures and take nice photos with my big camera instead of my phone, and some videos, and get all that stuff up on the site, just to show off the miniatures, because I think they're kind of cool.
Love it. You can find me across the internet at John McGuire RPG. I'm on the Instagram. I'm on the Blue Sky. I just want to say thank you real quick to everyone who backed Avon by the Sea during Zine Quest. It means a lot to me. It means a lot to Geo. Because of you, we get to make another book, and that is never wasted on us. So thank you from the bottom of our hearts. We're going to put out another good one for you. If you like the show, don't forget to rate, review, and subscribe. Your reviews really do help other listeners to find us. If you like the show, why not become a patron? Patreon.com/vintagerepg. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff Stu's writing. We got a behind-the-scenes look at the stuff that I'm doing. We've got a killer Discord community that has been quite the oasis from the world that we'd love for you to be a part of. We got early release episodes for as little as $1 a month. You can expect them usually on Friday or Saturday, depending on how late we record them in the week. We have at the $5 tier, you can rip a game with me every month. I usually take the time to run a game that we talk about on the show, or a game that I haven't gotten to play yet, so I like to keep it fresh. At the $10 tier, you can get it on my game, but you could also get it in on Stu's West Marches campaign, which is legendary at this point. There's an episode about it. It's deadly. You just don't get attached to your characters. Patreon.com/vintagerepg. So for Stu Horvath, I'm John Hambone McGuire. May the dice always roll in your favor.
Thanks for listening. Don't forget to like, review, and subscribe to the podcast. Every review helps other listeners to find us. The Vintage RPG Podcast is a ham-fisted production. Music by Dego West. Art by Schaefer Brown. If you like the podcast, you should also consider becoming a patron at patreon.com.